Hello, everybody. We're back for discussion and comments on the film we've just seen. I think we all found it incredibly hard to watch, but it's information that we need to know and we need to have seen. We're very fortunate to have with us Nancy Mansour of Existence is Resistance and the director of Eyewitness Palestine. She also took a delegation to Gaza and Rafah in the spring. And so what we'd like to do is have discussion and questions. Unfortunately, those watching it on television will not be able to ask questions or make comments. I wish you could. But those who are here will go to the microphone when called on, and they can. I ask people to keep their comments or their questions fairly short so that we can have as many questions as possible and as much comment and discussion as possible. So Nancy, I'll ask the first question, if I may, which is, could you tell us something about the delegation and the experience in Gaza and Rafah?
Thank you for having me. So it was a delegation of 10 doctors that we based them at different hospitals in Gaza. Many of those hospitals and clinics are no longer functioning. I mean, you know, I feel like I've been talking about this and this is just me, not my father, who, you know, lived through the first Nakba and is a Nakba survivor who was born in 1939. But, you know, I've been talking about this myself for like 20 years non-stop. And I'm at this point where it's really hard to like really put into words how, I don't know if disgusted and frustrated I am that we have to constantly talk about why we deserve to live. And you're watching 3 stories of 2.5 million people in Gaza alone. We're not even touching the West Bank, which, you know, I lost somebody that was like a brother of mine who was shot with an explosive bullet on October 31st. So, you know, this has been happening all over Palestine for over 75 years. And so, you know, going into Gaza, what can I tell you? I saw what you're seeing, destruction. Everybody I met had lost somebody. You know, I met a brother, Omar al-Husseini from Tal al-Hawa, who was taking refuge in Rafah, and he was a well-off businessman. 98 members of his family, including his wife and all his children, 7 of them, were still under the rubble when they got hit 2 months prior to when I met him. So, you know, these are just, you know, again, like, I don't know how much more I can tell you, except that you're seeing 3 stories of 2.5 million people just in Gaza. We're not talking about the rest of Palestine. My brother in the back, Ayman Nijm, between him and his wife, Samah, have lost over 250 members of their family. You know, his cousin last week and 90 members of that. I mean, it's everybody and it's constant. It was devastating. For me, I would say the worst part for me is I've been doing delegations for 17 years. And one thing that a lot of folks that I take always talk about during the report backs is how much community Palestinians have. And how they never see homeless people in Palestine. One thing that you notice when you go into Palestine, there's never people just sleeping in the streets. We just don't have that. If you have somebody that's mentally ill, you take care of them, you take them in, they're not just gonna be on the street. The elderly, we don't have senior citizen homes in Palestine. We take care of our families. And so that was something people always kept talking about when they came back. I never thought about it really, honestly, before that, because it was part of my upbringing. Like, we just didn't, you know, do homeless. And so when people kept saying it, when I went to Gaza in March, it was literally like like I got hit in the face with this, like, wow, everybody's homeless. It was just tents on tents on tents, and then just children everywhere. It was devastating. And, you know, there was no real infrastructure. I'm talking about like the doctors that were working there who are always like, you know, all the respect to the doctors that came out there and left their families and, you know, worked for 2 weeks or a month or 2 months. That's fantastic. But Palestinian doctors have had to do this, not by choice, for their whole life. And, you know, there were doctors like Muhammad Salama at the Emirati hospital who had to make choices. He was the head of the NICU at Emirati. And while we were there was twins that were born and another baby to another family that was born. And they only had space in the incubator for 2 babies. So he had to decide which of the babies to keep alive. So he kept one of the twins and the other family's baby, so that each family would have 1 baby. Like, those are the kind of decisions doctors are having to make, and then they have to live with that too. You know what I mean? So it's devastating. And I just feel like, you know, even sitting here is just such a privilege, you know what I'm saying? To like feel sad about a film. Like, this is people's lives, and I feel like we look at all these body bags and they're just numbers, and they're not. You know what I'm saying? Everybody had a name, everybody had a family, everybody has someone that loved them. And we want justice for every single Palestinian that has been slaughtered by Israel for the past, you know, 75 plus years. And so, you know, I feel like it's action time. Like, all this talk is like, it's cool, but, you know, and I'll answer any questions, but it's really about action at this point. So.
Thank you. Is there somebody who would like to ask a question or make a comment? Well, then I'll ask you to talk a little bit more about the delegation itself. It was in March, and how many people were there? Where did you go? What did you do? What sort of people came on the delegation?
It was for 10 days, 10 or 12, 10 days, 11 days. We, essentially, I would go to the UN. In Palestine, we say the United Nothing, briefings every morning, and listen to the numbers of, like, schools. I think when I left in beginning of April, there had been 243 schools that had been completely destroyed by Israel in Gaza. So I would go to the briefings and listen. You know, they were talking about malaria outbreaks. Now we're seeing polio in the water, and they were talking about different diseases that were gonna, you know, that were popping up or they expected to pop up, just because there was no real sanitation. You know, everybody was crammed into these areas. Like, Rafah was a city of, like, you know, 280,000 to 300,000 people, and we were there, and there was 1.7 million taking refuge in Rafah. So I don't know if there was no sidewalks, there was no, like, the middle island of the street. It was just all tents. Just everything was, it was just tents.
So who went on the delegation, and
It was 10 doctors.
It was 10 doctors, and
Yeah.
where were they from?
So a friend of mine, Jess Ghannam, who's a Palestinian doctor in California, put out a call to doctors, and through an organization called GLIA, who we work closely with, Tarek Lubani, a Palestinian doctor from Gaza as well, who lives in Canada, we got a lot of applications, and it was a vetting process. And then, so we had a couple of doctors from Qatar, we had a couple of doctors from Canada, we had one from South Carolina, we had 2 from New York, so from all over the place. And there was young doctors. We needed plastic surgeons, you know, people that could do re-amputations, ER doctors, and things like that.
And what was the
midwives.
organization or institution that received you on the other end?
It was the Ministry of Health.
The Ministry of Health?
Yes, who essentially is under the government. It doesn't mean they're Hamas fighters. They're under the government of Palestine in Gaza, which is Hamas. And so the Ministry of Health, every single director of the hospitals that we met, their entire families had been wiped out because they were all legitimate targets for Israel, because they work for even school teachers. Anything that is under the government, that is run by the government, is a legitimate target for Israel in their eyes.
So what were the doctors able to do while they were there? And I want to ask you if you were able to take supplies, and what sort of quantities of supplies. And also, what were the doctors able to do while they were there?
So we went through Rafah, which most of you probably know Rafah is closed now, and Israel want to take control of it. I mean, they are controlling it right now. Nothing comes in or out of Rafah for the most part. When we were driving in, it's really crazy because I have a 3.5-minute video of all the aid trucks that are just sitting there, like the drivers are gone. This is just aid that's just been sitting there molding. The aid trucks, as we've seen in Kerem Shalom, where the settlers are like, you know, beating the drivers and smashing up all the goods that are coming through. But we saw a lot of aid held up. We were able, because we were going through Egyptians and then to straight into Gaza without going through Israelis, we were able to take in between there was a co lead on the delegation with me from our organization, from Eyewitness. So there was 12 of us who were able to take 96 suitcases of medication, women's products, diapers, things for kids. We took a couple of bags of like educational toys for kids and books and things like that, to give to a couple of centers that I've worked with before. We also took, I think, $150,000 worth of insulin in, and so, yeah, I mean, it was pretty smooth, and I was excited because the idea for me was I did a delegation of 200 people in 2009 into Gaza, but it was after the bombing of the Operation Cast Lead. And so when this happened, I was like, I want to take like 200 to 300 doctors. And I couldn't find a way in. And so when Tariq spoke to me from GLIA, they were sending in these missions, but on a smaller scale. I was like, let me go in, because I hadn't been for 10 years, and let me see what the process is. So when I saw how Rafah was quite lenient in us being able to take, you know, we're talking about like gauzes and like burn cream and like, you know, heart medication. People aren't thinking about like people with diabetes and people with, kidney failure and like all the regular things that everything is like emergency right now. So, you know, there was like 7 dialysis machines in the whole of Gaza, where, you know, most people, that have kidney failure are like, they have to do, 4 or 5 days a week for 4 hours at a time. And in Gaza, they're like sharing these machines, so they get to do it like once or twice a week for a couple of hours. Like, it's not even, so the doctors, they helped a lot of people. Some of them were ER doctors, some of them worked in the clinics to help. There was Dalil Sultan Clinic, which became a morgue a couple months ago, and now is just completely shut down. Dalil Sultan Clinic used to see about 160 patients a day, and when we were there, they were up to almost 3,000 a day. So they just had put a bunch of tents out the back. So a couple of our doctors were stationed there because there was a lot of the refugees that needed, had injuries and just regular everyday stuff. So we had a doctor based in Shuhada al-Aqsa in Deir al-Balah. That was horrific because we went in, and when you see them like bombing the courtyards and, the hospitals, like there is literally, I can't tell you, like thousands of refugees, internally displaced people, as they call them, IDPs, living in the hospital hallways. Like we went into Shuhada al-Aqsa, and they wanted to tour the doctor that was gonna be staying there for the next 2 weeks, and then they wanted to give this site tour to the other doctors that were with us. And I remember when I walked in, there was just like bodies everywhere, and we went into this one room, and there was a brother they had just brought in. He may have been like in his 20s, and he was just burnt everywhere. And I remember like the doctor started explaining, and I just like, I looked around and I caught the eye of the brother that was like laid there, and he was in so much pain, but he looked at me, and I thought to myself, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, why am I even in this room? Like, why don't they get privacy? Why, like, it was just, I don't know what hit, and I just walked out, and I never went back into that hospital. I dropped the doctor off and picked him up, but I felt like I was taking up space where there was no space, you know what I mean? And then I don't know, that was something else that bothered me a lot on the trip, is like, giving people money, and they need it, right? But giving people money and just knowing how my people are, because one of the things that I do before my delegations is the orientation, pre-delegation. And one of the things I always tell them is, don't try and give people money, they'll get offended. Palestinians don't want your money. They just want you to acknowledge and listen to their stories and then go back and relay those stories. They don't want your money. They're not starving. They're not broke. And it was crazy because it was just, it was just the complete opposite. Like, they need the money, but then I knew how much pride it took from our men, and just people as a whole, to keep taking money from all these foreigners I'd taken over there, So there was a lot of things that just people probably wouldn't have thought bothered me, but it bothered me a lot. I just knew how much it took from certain people. We had a young There was a young man and his 5-year-old daughter. He hadn't changed his clothes in 3 or 4 months. I mean, everything was matted. His daughter had no shoes on, and we were staying in an apartment with an organization called Team Humanity, who are search and rescue guys from Denmark. And, you know, every time a building got bombed near us or in the area, they would run out and go help search for people in the rubble. And I remember they came home and they were like, we're not really, because we're a deconflicted apartment, which deconflicted means that it's arranged with Israel, that they know that there's internationals there and they're not supposed to hit. But as we saw with the World Central Kitchen and many other international workers, Israel doesn't care. But we're deconflicted, which means you can't really bring anyone into the apartment because you don't know who they're affiliated with, or if their uncle's brother's wife's, you know, cousin 3 times removed works for the government, then he's a target. So, you know, but when they came up and said they have a guy in the car with his daughter, and, you know, he hasn't eaten in days and he has 4 kids in a tent down the street, and he'd been waiting for aid, and they found him just crying on the street corner, I told them just bring him up. I don't know what hit me in that moment, because I know it put everybody kind of at risk, but I just like, don't leave him in the car. I don't know what it was, you know, he had a daughter with him, and so he came up, and then everybody, these doctors gave him their clothes. We gave him our sleeping bags that we had brought, you know, for his kids and his wife. We just pretty much gave him everything we had. And I remember him at one point just started crying, and I just know it was his pride, you know what I mean? Like, just, you know, he was so thankful, but I also was like, you would never catch a Palestinian in a million years, you know, come and take a bunch of free stuff from foreigners in a random apartment anywhere. You know, it's just not our nature or our culture. And so that was a moment that never left me. But I sat with him and just, I tried to make it somewhat easier, you know, on him. But yeah, there's moments
Well,
like
let's
that.
stop and see if anybody in the audience has a question or a comment for Nancy about the film or about anything.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you for being here tonight. My
Yeah,
name's...
We can't actually hear you.
Oh, is this better?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know if the mic will be picked up for those who are watching the stream.
Okay.
It might be better if you don't mind.
I'm just curious if there's a way to support the work that you're doing or other delegations. I think a lot of us here are trying to find ways to donate, and it's unclear like what is actually getting through. Is it best to donate to GoFundMe's for folks who are trying to get out of the country because that is so incredibly expensive? Is it better to, you know, when delegations are going over, to give money to help you get more supplies? Is there like a limit to what you can bring over? So yeah, I'm just curious, what are ways that we can support people in Palestine that's actually going to get to folks who need it, you know, medical supplies. I'm not sure. It seems like food is difficult because of the aid being blocked. So I don't know if you just have a sense of what makes the most sense for us to do in terms of monetary or material ways to support folks.
That's
Yeah.
a great question, and I'm also, after you answer, I'm going to ask Michel Mushabek to answer, because he has also been raising a lot of money and aid, and it's also getting through. So between the two of you, I think we'll learn a lot.
So first of all, right now, because the only way in is through Israel. And so they only allow, I think, 4 or 5 people in a day, if that. There's been days where they've cancelled on some of the doctors going in. And you can't take anything but a backpack and a small luggage, and only personal medication. There's like all these restrictions, of course. So right now, as far as like people taking in, if you know someone that's going in, you know, money is always helpful, right? But as far as myself, I mean, there's a lot of people on the ground in Palestine that are doing the work. There's organizations like Shabab Ghazi, who cook for, you know, 3,500 people a day. You've got Watermelon Relief, who cook for almost, I think, they're trying to do 1 million, I think, in a week or something. But Watermelon Relief, and they're actually about to get registered in Portugal. So it'll be a lot easier to donate to them, because all of them are mostly through PayPal's. And then there's Bisan, the journalist, has an organization, Ilna Ili Ilak, They're also doing, they give families money that need it, and they feed people. Also, Mecca, the Middle East Children's Alliance, they have a lot of partners on the ground, and I saw their kitchens, I saw the work that they do, and I was with, when I went in 2009, Barbara Lubin was with us. So, I mean, I've seen their work for years, and they get supplies on the ground, and they have a lot of different projects going on the ground. I do also, if you don't mind, after Michelle, Ayman, who's from Gaza, I know you know some different things on the ground. I mean, your family's there, so I don't know if you want to add to it too, but that would be helpful as well.
That's very helpful. And the mic is in back. I don't know which one of you wants to go first. But also, what I'd like to ask is if we can actually write down these organizations, because then we can distribute it and make it available both to the people on our mailing lists and hopefully also to the people who are watching us on Channel 191 live stream. Because I think we have to continue to protest. We have to continue to do whatever we can to get a complete embargo on arms shipments from the United States government to Israel. But we also have to answer what's human and in our hearts.
Should I? Yeah, I think there is a grassroots international emergency fund that funds Palestine Center for Human Rights, Palestine Medical Relief Society. They fund Women Affairs Center for like hygiene kits and women kits and midwifery kits, and also
Excuse me, I'm going to ask Jackson if there's a way to turn up the volume on the mic, because it's a little difficult to hear. Go on in the meantime, and we'll do our best.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. So I think there is a grassroots international emergency fund. They have been working since the start of the genocide to bring like 100% will go to civil society on the ground. Like, for instance, Palestine Medical Relief Society is big in the West Bank and Gaza. They work on both sides. So also you have Women Affairs Centers to provide hygiene kits, midwifery kits, food, shelters for women who are internally displaced in Gaza. I know you know the number, like all of Gaza are displaced right now. So also we have a Palestine Center for Human Rights that goes for the International Criminal Court, International Court of Justice for the genocide cases. So they are doing monitoring and documentation for human rights. Also you have community-based organizations in some areas, like in my hometown, called like for disabled people, like people who are in evacuation center. So to help them to relieve trauma as much as they can by indigenous healing methods. There are so many organizations. Community-based organization was the most important one that we focus on this time, because this is medical genocide. In addition to cultural genocide and other genocides, is Palestine Medical Relief Society right now, and also very importantly and internationally to support Palestine Center for Human Rights, so they are able to go to The Hague to to pursue accountability and justice from the live stream genocide in human history. So there are so many also in the West Bank. There's emergency fund, which, because I came from philanthropy background, is important to give for people who are doing it on the ground, like Palestinian, to give them some self-ownership, self-empowerment to do the work. And they know the nitty-gritty details. They know who was evacuated, who was internally displaced, who is sick, and etc. So I encourage everyone. I mean, there are so many organizations that can work, but I encourage folks to support indigenous work on the ground for people who really knows how to deal with this kind of situation, which is a new genocide is a new for us, but Gaza has been under slow motion genocide for the last 17 years. So they have been responsive to these in a timely manner. Thank you.
That's extremely helpful, but don't leave the microphone yet, because here's the question. So I've been hearing for a long time that that not everybody's able to get aid through. Is that still the case? So this is a lot of organizations, but are they actually all able to get the aid directly there. Has the situation changed at all? Is it different from what we've heard?
I mean, if you hear...
But
yeah.
right into the microphone, please.
Okay. If you hear the Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich, today he said, we have 2.2 million people, they have to be starved. Today. I mean, just not yesterday. So we are talking about, yes, the aid is being, after reoccupying of Gaza, reoccupying of Rafah crossing, is extremely hard to get the aid. And as you know, before even reoccupation of Rafah crossing, they were allowing like 10, 20 under very extreme vetting process. So to keep the people are dying. For instance, very important, 17 years ago, Don Weissglass, he said, we don't want them to lose weight. We don't want them to die. We want them to lose weight. Gaza has been under a slow motion genocide for 17 years. And we have been screaming and telling people about the infrastructure of genocide. Second, about the aid. Yes, I mean, right now it has to go through Israeli Kerem Shalom in Arabic, Kerem Shalom crossing. And it is very, very, very little. As today, like the North are starving. The North are starving right now. I mean, extremely hard, but what we can do is to encourage people, to help people to protect the civil society system. This is like right now, this is genocide. It's not like any kind of thing that we have experienced before. So aid is coming, yes, it is a slow, hopefully will be into the genocide. I don't think will be a ceasefire. I said from day one, will be an end to genocide. I hope there will be an end to genocide, and those civil society can find ways under extremely expensive. Like, I mean, my own sister, like even like diapers for her kids, there are no diapers, and extremely expensive. It is like shekel, which is like, let's say $1. It's right now it is 10 folds, and people cannot afford it. And even like Western Union, if you want to send money, like there are so many struggles that we have to deal with. But at least we encourage folks to keep donating, to keep sending for the indigenous people of Palestine, because this is a genocide that it will take at least for us 30 years to stand on our foot. And I'm not sure if you have heard the Lancet report, we have they said at least 186,000 people who will be killed in Gaza, not just the current 40. Because they are indirect deaths and other stuff. So aid, I encourage people to do whatever they can to support humanity.
Thank you.
And
do you have anything to add, Michelle?
No, I mean, I work with a lot of the organizations that both Simon and Nancy mentioned, and I've been working a lot recently with the Middle East Children's Alliance because they have succeeded in getting some aid trucks into Gaza, as well as the Palestine Children's Relief Fund is another organization that has people on the ground. They have a crew in Gaza, and they have been able to get some aid.
Can I add one thing? I worked with the Middle Eastern Children's Alliance for 5 years in Gaza, and they are doing incredible job, like inside Gaza Strip. So it is a great service-oriented organization in that time to support them. I just want to share that.
Thank you. JD, people need to speak into the microphone, and I don't know about anybody else, but I'm actually having trouble understanding what's said into the microphone. I could not understand. But you do need to... He said
it's clear on the...
Okay, good. But Janie, you need to ask your question into the microphone, because we have people listening on via television, and they need to be able to hear what you say too.
Yeah, I had a hard time understanding you, and I wanted you to repeat the first thing you said about an Israeli minister saying just yesterday. I thought what I heard you say was very shocking, but maybe not shocking.
I mean, this is all over the news, and I have screen. He said Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich is one of the far-right ministers. He is the leader of religious Zionism, which they are against any kind of ceasefire. They are the continuation of the genocide on Gaza. And there are so many dehumanization or dehumanizing rhetoric coming from him. Today, I'm just going to quote it so people can look it up. Just give me 1 second, quote unquote. Yeah, here it is on the Times of Israel. Smotrich might be justified and moral to cause 2 million Gazans to die of hunger, but world won't let us. This is every day. I mean, that we are dealing like, and the dehumanization was for a long time. Genocide doesn't come just, okay, will be genocide tomorrow. There is infrastructure of genocide that we have been screaming for the last 17 years.
May I ask you another question? Are the Gazans aware of the people that are starving, which is almost all of them, it seems? Are they aware of the political level of which, for example, that statement? Do they know that Israeli minister is saying something like that?
I mean, they are extremely aware. They are hearing every day, so they became normalized to it.
Okay, so they're bombarded by the level of the political level, and then they're trying for. Sorry, I shouldn't be. All right, I will ask a different question of all of you. So when we blame ourselves, which we should, they too, meaning Gazans, I think in the film there were a few crying out, "Why isn't the world watching? Isn't they paying any attention to us?" But is that generally the case? That is, it's hard for me to imagine that in such desperate situations they can even be carrying on that kind of level of conversation. Or am I just really missing obvious?
Yeah,
Why don't we let Nancy take a crack at that first and then pass it to Emma?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just really quick. I think this is genocidal trauma, and they are bearing the brunt of it. I think what we can do as people from Gaza, we are suing Biden, Austin, and Blinken for aiding and abetting genocide and complicity in genocide. There is a case by the Center for Constitutional Rights, and we ask everyone to read the case, and we are going after those enablers by the court, by the federal court, and I encourage everyone to go and read about these cases that have been intentionally actually dismissed by the public or mainstream media.
Can you take that too?
Did you want to add anything, Nancy?
No, I think he owns it.
Okay. So, Bert, you wanted to say something?
May I ask, those of you who are of Palestinian background and therefore have taken a lifelong interest in these issues, you spoke at the beginning of your frustrations, a few of your frustrations. How do you all feel now? I'm focusing not on Palestine, I'm focusing on the United States, and my question is this. Do you perceive any meaningful change in United States people, citizens, awareness, concern, action about events in Palestine and the United States' role and complicity in this? Do you sense any change, any progress? Does the current political situation in the United States suggest to you that there might be more positive change?
I will answer. The current political situation in the United States, I'm laughing. It's actually sad because we're looking at Trump and Kamala Harris. And people talk about the lesser of two evils, but there's no change when you just settle, right? And Kamala Harris is not a good person, and has taken over 5 million from AIPAC. You know, it doesn't matter who's in power because this has been going on for so long. America's interests there, right? Israel is a military base for America there. American politicians are being paid millions of dollars by AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. I see the public changing. I've been here for almost 20 years. I've seen a lot of shift. It's too slow though. It's 2024, and for the last, let's just say, I mean, I hate this October 7th starting point because it's really not. But let's just start from October. But for the last 10 months, we've been, you can pull up videos of dismembered babies and headless Palestinian babies and children and men and women. I'm not into this children and women thing because our Palestinian men matter as well. My father matters, my uncles, my brother, my grandfather, they all matter. And so, we're watching them being burned alive. We're watching Israeli parliament discuss whether it's okay to rape Palestinian prisoners, and they agreed it was okay to rape Palestinian prisoners yesterday and released the 9 Israeli soldiers that raped and, which ended in the death of 2 Palestinian detainees and political prisoners. But there's been stories of raping children forever. The reason they shut down Defense for Children International and calling them a terrorist organization, well, not shutting them down, but labeling them a terrorist organization, is because there was a report about the Israelis raping a 6-year-old boy that they had arrested. And so the stories of rape and like torture with, putting, I know somebody's child who had jumper cables tied to his testicles, and they would electrocute him to try and make him tell them that he threw stones at, the most sophisticated army in the world. Well, one of the fourth, are they the 4th strongest military in the world now? And so I don't, we're in a place where everything is available to people. So I feel like these people that say, oh, but that's over there and I'm over here. You're paying for this shit. You should care. This is your tax money. This is your money. You don't have to go out with a Palestinian flag and say free Palestine, but stop your money from funding these psychotic, genocidal maniacs. And Palestinians can end it by themselves, believe me. If Israel didn't have the weaponry, and if it was really a war, I'm big on language, this conflict language and this war, it's not a war. If Palestinians had the weapons that Israel had, or even just half of them, let's just say they had 1 tank, right? Because you got to remember, you've got 30,000, supposedly 30 to 40,000 Palestinian resistance fighters on the ground in Gaza that are fighting in flip-flops and not one moving vehicle. So, let's just say they had just a quarter of the weapons that Israel had. Palestinians can definitely get their land back by themselves. I don't see the American government changing their policies for Palestine. I just don't. Their interests are way deeper than a few brown children and people. There's oil, there's so much there for them, you know what I'm saying? I hope that someday they'll get sick of this psychotic child they've raised and put there, and disown them, but I'm hoping it will happen. But I don't see a shift in the government at all. Not at all. Until you vote someone like Jill Stein in, or there's no real, I don't see, there's no interest for them. What interest is in it for them? They get more money from AIPAC. They get, arms deals, and there's no.
So I stated my question rather generally. I don't think I actually referred to the government or to the elections.
Right into the microphone.
But I'm sorry. I stated my question deliberately generally about the current situation. Naturally, you took it to mean the current political situation and the expectation there. From the frustrations, ongoing frustrations that you expressed, I take it you don't perceive much meaningful change in the popular, forget the government for the moment, the popular awareness or concern about Palestine and Palestinians. You don't see any change worth noting.
Not really. I think the streets would be burning and people would have been calling for a ceasefire 7-8 months ago. I don't know. I don't understand how it's okay. I don't understand how this is still happening. So, I mean, if there was, I see more people supporting Palestine. I see more keffiyehs. Maybe it's just because people are comfortable wearing them now. I don't, but I don't really see people as angry as they should be about what is happening live before them. And, I don't feel that there's that urgency. We're 10 months in at this point. I mean, 75 years and 10 months, but I mean, we're 10 months into watching a live genocide. So no, I don't. I see protests sometimes where there's, 50 people. No, the whole place should be out. There's no reason why there's only 50. Every single person that has a child should be out there. If they give a crap about their children, they should be out there. I don't understand how people could see these mothers and fathers and think they're going to get over it once this is over, or see all those children that have lost their parents and think they're going to get over, losing their parents. It's hard enough losing a parent. I don't know if anybody here has lost a parent, and you think about them every day, and to think about how they were, blown up in front of you, or just the violence that they were taken away in, like the manner they were taken away. How are you going to fix that? There's no psychiatrist or mental health clinician that is going to be able to fix that or take that pain away from those children. And you're talking about hundreds of thousands, at this point. So,
And do the rest of you share those same frustrations?
I'm frustrated, but I don't agree with you.
You don't have to.
Do others of you share those frustrations?
I do agree that we have a sense of frustration by the whole of humanity, because Palestine is a very ancestral Christian, where Jesus Christ was born. This is a place for 2 billion Muslims. This is a place, a holy land, and it is being decimated in front of our eyes. But I do, having been working for years and years, around the International Criminal Court, we have been seeking jurisdiction for Palestine for 5 years. And you see the International Criminal Court came with a decision to arrest Netanyahu and Gallant. That won't happen because of the British control over Karim Khan and the ICC. Second, I think the ICJ, the International Court of Justice case led by South Africa against the genocide in Palestine, and every country, like today, Turkey actually joined the case. I think this is a praxis for self-determination in Palestine. I honestly, we have, as indigenous people of Palestine, all of us, we have no luxury or time to be. Not to think about Palestine. It is in our blood, it is in our blood, and by our words we will fight for it. By our legal case, that we will fight for it. So I think for me, I believe in hope in the dark. I personally do, but I do agree with our short-term feelings, the student encampments in the United States. It's the second after the 1971. It was all across the United States. I was in Egypt trying to evacuate my family, and I was saying, oh my God, those are the students that someone that studied in the US. I do my PhD here. I saw them, said, oh my God, this is the true humanist people we are dealing with. And being actually I was in Northampton, and going to work, and I saw people with keffiyeh. I remember 2012 when I was speaking with the mother of Richard Khoury, people are afraid to wear keffiyeh. But right now, everyone is wearing keffiyeh. I think this is the emotional praxis, and I feel it that self-determination is not, we will get it. But we hope we will get it sooner than later. This is ingrained in our hearts, and in Nancy's heart, in Michelle and Michael's heart, in our souls, and we want to stop. Period. period. We want to stop until this country that is our own, that we grow up and we were raised in it, to be free from the most belligerent and heinous occupation this world has ever seen. Is that good, hopeful, or we will be?
I'm going to say one more thing, and then I should take this mic away.
Anybody else?
Okay, just to say that, Nancy, with all of the uproar that's going on right now in terms of black-white relations in this country and the genocide that we perpetrated on Native Americans as well as blacks, and there's a lot more awareness of that and a lot more concern of that. There is, I would say, a somewhat of a, it spurs more comparable feeling with people elsewhere in the world, Ukraine and Gaza. In a way, Ukraine doesn't compare with the Gaza because it has, but I think you get my point.
Are you selling more books? Is that one measure of increased interest?
I'll grab the microphone so I can answer.
And we just have a few more minutes.
To answer your question, I think one is I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I didn't have hope. I think that Israel is self-destructing. I think that we have seen a tremendous change in the discourse in this country over the last 15 years. I am in awe of the student movement, of the younger generation who are unstoppable. But the discourse on the public level has not been matched on the level of our political leaders. And that's where we have to concentrate and keep at it until it does. And I think with the colleges and universities and the students coming back in the fall, we are going to see many more protests and encampments. And this is very, very hopeful, I think, because we know how isolated the United States and Israel are in this world. And I think the future of the world as seen through the window of Gaza is dark, it's bleak. Gaza is asking us an important question of what kind of a world we want to have for to live in, what kind of a world we want our children and grandchildren to grow up in. Gaza is asking us to accept the lies, the injustice, the horror that we're seeing every single day, on our TVs, on social media, in the newspapers. For me, Gaza, it's really offering us an important moment whereby do we fight for change or do we slide deeper into this darkness? I'm hopeful.
And with that, I'm going to say that I'd like to end with those last words from Michelle, because I think in all this darkness we do have to have some hope. And I'll say that we're also looking forward tomorrow to a commemoration of another genocide that was instigated by the United States, which was the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I've realized, contemplating this date tomorrow, that in an instant, on August 6th, hundreds of thousands of lives were wiped out by a nuclear bomb. We are watching over 10 months something similar happening in slow and agonizing motion. And so I would ask that tomorrow, as we commemorate the anniversary of Hiroshima and then on the 9th of Nagasaki, that we also dedicate ourselves to doing absolutely everything in our power to eliminate not just nuclear weapons, but conventional weapons, and to bring to task and to justice the people who are capable of such inhumanity and criminality. Thank you for coming tonight. And I'll just give one plug, which is on August 17th, we are presenting at City Space the play Palestine with Najla Saeed, which is very different from this. It's about, so Palestinians and Arab Americans are beginning to be seen by a small sector of society. But what this play talks about is what it's like to grow up Arab American and Palestinian in this country, and to not be seen, and to not be seen, and invite you to come to this play. It's actually quite witty, but it'll give you a good picture into that world. August 17th at 7:30 at City Space. Thank you very much. And a special thanks to Nancy Mansour for coming here to join us for this film, and to Easthampton Media for hosting the series of 4 films that we've just concluded.